I'd like to introduce our second to last panel of the day, and this is the panel on climate smart agriculture in ASEAN. Climate smart agriculture is a way to achieve short and long-term agricultural development priorities in the face of climate change and serves as a bridge to other development priorities. This panel will discuss the objectives of climate smart agriculture and ways in which agribusinesses and governments can foster climate smart agriculture in the region. I'd like to introduce the chair, that's Marco Ferroni, Executive Director, Syngenta Foundation for Sustainable Agriculture, and I'd like to also invite Marco's entire panel to join him on stage. Marco, if you would please.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed. The topic of this particular panel for the next 50, that is 50 minutes, is climate smart agriculture in the ASEAN region. And as you will see, I trust from the discussion that's about to ensue, what we will have to say ties in very closely with what we have just heard from Jason. In the end, it requires the whole topic of sustainability and CSA, i.e. climate smart agriculture, requires a systemic approach, requires the ability to think along multidimensional lines of effectiveness and causality. And one topic that will be no doubt coming through in our panel, at least I hope that it will, is about what is the kinds of contributions, what's the scope for contributions from both the public sector, the private sector, and indeed, of course, civil society. Now, as you can see from your program for this conference, we have quoted the FAO in trying to get a hold of the concept of CSA, climate smart agriculture, and from FAO's website, the right kind of institution to consult, no doubt about this. There are three objectives that climate smart agriculture pretends to pursue. First, sustainably increasing agricultural productivity and farm incomes. Secondly, adapting and building resilience to climate change. And thirdly, decreasing, if not eliminating, greenhouse gas emissions as occasioned by agriculture and agriculture-related land use change. Now, against these three objectives, the purpose of this panel is to consider and discuss the objectives and to clarify what they mean in practice from the perspective of key market participants and stakeholders, in particular as represented by our panel, government, the academia, and the corporate sector. Secondly, our objective will be to explore whether there are tensions between any or all of these three objectives identified by the FAO and the quest for modernization of agriculture and supply chains, as well as the quest for sustainability in its different dimensions. With respect to this particular aspect, that we might indeed ask the question whether CSA is not the same as sustainability in a broad sense of the term. There's a third objective for this panel, which is to explore how governments and the business sector can foster climate smart agriculture in the particular region that we are concerned with today, the ASEAN region. We have a first-rate panel, ladies and gentlemen, to help us consider those aspects. First, Margaret Yoovatana. Margaret is the Senior Policy and Planning Specialist at the Ministry of Agriculture and Cooperatives in Thailand, a government representative. Secondly, Agus Purnomo, Managing Director for Sustainability and Strategic Stakeholder Engagement at Golden Agri-Resources. Thirdly, academia. Dr. Rizaldi, the Executive Director of the Center for Climate Risk and Opportunity Management in Southeast Asia and Pacific at Bogor Agricultural University, not far from here. And Rizaldi, I like particularly the aspect of opportunity management. And lastly, Sunny Verghese, the co-founder and group chief executive officer of Olam International. Ladies and gentlemen, as we look at CSA and sustainability from in agriculture, I have encouraged the panel to give us a view that refers to the value chain as a whole of food and agriculture, not just to limit themselves to aspects of primary production. which have been addressed in previous panels. Of course, primary production, factor productivity growth, technology, risk management, agricultural services and access to markets is always important and will be no doubt looming large in our discussions, but we should also look at the task of linking professional buyers to smallholder farmers. Everybody nowadays, and this has been clear in the conversation up until now, wants to work with smallholder farmers. I submit to you that few know exactly how to do it. In addition, it is about raising transparency in the supply chains and food markets, including the question of traceability, compliance, and compliance with quality and safety standards, and many more aspects, including, of course, also the whole question of the enabling environment. In other words, infrastructure, public investment, price, trade, and other incentive policies, and so on, regulatory aspects, and those factors that determine the business climate that we need for responsible business conduct in agriculture and food. We have agreed that we will go through the panel, giving each of our panel members something like 3 minutes to explain their personal perspectives on what I have just articulated, as well as tell us in a summary fashion what their organization does or how their organization approaches the question. We would then have a discussion, essentially a conversation among the panel. We might take a few questions from the floor also, and in the end I'll try, if I can, to summarize. May I therefore ask Margaret to take the floor and be the first to speak.
Thank you, Marco. Your long introduction makes me nervous. And I'm quite privileged to be surrounded by handsome men on here. And another privilege is ladies first all the time, okay? So I am here representing the ASEAN Climate Resilience Network, as Thailand is the current chair, and I am serving as the regional focal point for ASEAN CRN. And there are a number of ASEAN frameworks and structures relevant to climate change in agriculture, particularly the 2 ASEAN pillars on the ASEAN Economic Community and the ASEAN Socio-Cultural Blueprints. Also, the ASEAN Multi-Sectoral Framework on Climate Change in Agriculture, Fisheries, and Forestry towards Food Security, or AFCC, and the Vision and Strategic Plan of ASEAN Cooperation in Food, Agriculture, and Forestry, or the FAF 2025, which was introduced to us by the keynote speech of His Excellency Thomas Lembong, Minister of Trade of Indonesia, yesterday. And also the ASEAN Integrated Food Security Framework, or AIFS, and now the ASEAN Climate Resilience Network, or ASEAN CRN. We envision ASEAN CRN as a capable and valued multi-stakeholder collaboration network for a sustainable, competitive, climate resilience agriculture in the ASEAN community. We work on 5 areas: knowledge management, project support for scaling up of CSA practices, funding, capacity building, and joint policy statement and protocols. The ASEAN CRN then developed the ASEAN guidelines on the promotion of climate-smart agriculture, or CSA practices. We have this booklet, which was endorsed by the 37th AMAP in the Philippines recently last year. We are moving forward to the implementation of regional cooperation on model farming, crop management, stress-tolerant varieties, seed production, packaging of appropriate CSA technologies in different agroecological vulnerabilities, post-harvest handling, crop insurance, crop information and early warning services, and pest and diseases surveillance. For corn, we address the problem of high seed costs for hybrid seeds by empowering the farmers to produce their own hybrid seeds, which are drought-tolerant varieties, at community scale through the My Seed Village program. We implement ASEAN CRN initiatives, not only with the 3 Ps, public-private partnership, or some would say 4 Ps, public-private producer partnership. But we go for 5 Ps, public, private, producer, people partnerships. Special attention will continue to be given to the impact upon the role of women in climate change. For example, when reviewing the vulnerability and sharing technical and scientific information and gender-specific issues, examples in the improvement of food production by women. We also partner with the international organization, and we promote linkages to regional international processes related to climate change, agriculture, and food security, such as the UNFCCC. ASEAN, through the ASEAN CRAN, recently has made submission to the subsidiary body on scientific and technical advice, or SABSTA. So going back to the topic on climate-smart agriculture, while there are synergies between the 3 goals of CSA, that is productivity, resilience, and mitigation, we have to prioritize the resilience of local communities and their livelihoods to climate change. CSA strategies to increase productivity have to benefit smallholders and be sustainable in the long term. The goal of greenhouse gas emission through CSA can only be achieved if the right incentives for smallholders to adopt such practices are provided. We see a large amount of technologies proposed by the private sector, the research community, as well as the government institution. What is, however, lacking is the sector-wide dissemination of such practices and their adoption by smallholder farmers who dominates the agriculture sectors in the ASEAN community and should be the ultimate beneficiaries of CSA promotion. 3 key strategies that are essential to promote sector-wide dissemination and adoption of climate-smart practices. First, we need to invest in the evidence-based of the benefits of CSA for the smallholder farmers. Only where there is intrinsic business case for smallholders to adopt such practices, there is hope that smallholders change. Second, we need to invest in the service provision to smallholders to raise their awareness of the benefits of CSA practices and equip them with the necessary knowledge and resources for implementation. Okay, and the third is we need to raise the voice of the farmers on the discourse on climate change and agricultural development.
Thank you very much, Margaret. This is a big menu that we will be getting back to selectively. Can I invite Agus now to speak from his perspective, which is a corporate agribusiness perspective, if I can put it that way, which I'm sure will be adding dimensions to what we have just heard.
Thank you. I just would like to share on these topics about 4 issues on smart agriculture and just one other issues of effort to help increase the productivity of independent small growers. One report that I would like to share on this panel this afternoon is the use of IT in improving our yield, productivity, and efficiency. We have a facility in our company that enable us to monitor on a daily basis with the units of 30 hectares per block, the current situations, whether a particular block is suffering from lack of water or having a lot of water, lack of certain minerals and whatnot, we can monitor one by one, so we can focus and maintain the treatment, the right treatment for every blocks of our 200 plantations. This facility enabling us to increase the yields from best agricultural practices. The second element is on the seeds. Seeds plays very important role in productivity. We are currently using what we call, from our own development, R&D, the Dabimas seeds. And at the laboratory level, our seeds can produce 9 tons of CPO per hectare. Although our average production is still at the level of 5.6 to 5.8 tons per hectare of CPO. But within 10 years or 15 years, we will be able to come to the level of 9 tons per hectare, which is substantial and which will reduce the need to expand and convert additional land to achieve the same amount of production. The element of seeds is also important because of the resistance to disease, the Ganoderma, and also we are employing some other environmentally friendly pest control from use of oil and other crops that can prevent certain insects to explode. The third issue that we are doing and still in the progress of applying it throughout our plantation is the waste management policy. We are employing the methane captures to reduce the greenhouse gases, and we know we have calculated that a plantation without methane captures will produce an emission at the level of about 800 kilograms per ton of product, CPO, while if we use methane capture, it can be only half of it, about 480 kilograms per ton of products. So the applications of methane captures and utilizations of methanes for electricity generations or to feed in again to generate heats in our production process is an important part of our smart agriculture. The other component, which is the hardest actually, is the issue of social. We are currently finishing already participatory mapping of 58 villages in West and Central Kalimantan with about 20,000 households, of which we have a map agreed by all the participating communities on the boundary. And the next step of that is we are engaging the what we call as participatory conservation planning, the PCP, at the level of village. A total of 3,000 hectares already agreed, where we're going to conserve the area, where we would like to change it into production. And there are now 3 village level regulations that are being proposed to the district government for adoption. When that happened, and this is the real bottom-up conservation effort, that we took part together in full consent with the local community. Those are the 4 things that we are doing as smart agriculture. Now, talking about the whole sector, as rightly mentioned by the Jason's speech half an hour ago, the problem is on the bottom producers, the one that has the most problem because of low productivity and all kinds of other issues. In Indonesia, about 45% of our plantations are owned and controlled by smallholders. 4.5 million hectares at least, and half of them are independent smallholders. Their productivity is only 1/2 or 1/3 of the productivity of the corporations. So the effort to help them become a challenge. If we can increase their productivity, then there will be a less demand of land conversion. We are proposing together with the Chambers of Commerce the program of replanting with innovative financing scheme, with support of the government, Ministry of Finance, and also now with the support of CPO fund. We are optimistic that if everybody work together, because this cannot be done by just one company, it has to be the whole industry players take part in it, with the coordinator coming from the government, then we can increase the productivity of the sector, which means a reduction of land conversion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Agus. Rizaldi, I think that the concept of risk management that Agus has referred to probably excites you, and you have the floor.
Thank you, Marco. I just would like to quote what you just said about the climate smart agriculture is sustainability, more efficient with less, and I think it's been mentioned before, and also adaptation, how actually the crop management can be adapted into the changing climate. It is talking about change of the management, change of the crop. And I think it's not easy for the farmers to do that. And I think they should have a capacity how they can make use of the climate information, how they can manage the risk. Because how actually at the end, how they can reduce the loss of harvest area because of the extreme climate, and also due to the changing climate. And then we are talking another aspect of it is mitigation. And how actually the agriculture, the farming practices can lead into low emission. How they can implement practices that can reduce the emission. I think it is talking about the use of, optimize the use of waste, agriculture waste, how they can make use of agriculture waste for producing fertilizer. And as Agus mentioned, it could be also used for producing energy. And how actually many farmers, small farmers in the rural areas, actually they still rely on kerosene or from the wood, full wood, and how they can make use of the gas generating from the animal waste, from agricultural waste for getting the energy. And of course, talking about improving the productivity, and I think farmers would like to do that, but of course sometimes they are being blocked by the need of investment. Another also the uncertainty of climate. So if we know that under the changing climate, what farmers understand, under the changing climate they are going to expose to more bad years. And this situation actually blocked the farmers for trying or implement improved management, crop management, because by doing that they need also more investment. They are not sure whether the season is going to be bad or to be good. And these are the things that probably the idea of introducing one of the program, we call it climate index insurance. So index-based insurance, weather-based insurance is one of the strategy how the farmers can actually manage the risk. And many people are quite skeptic about the index insurance. And I think because of complexity, how actually we develop the index, and because of the limited number of station observation for developing the index. And I think probably I need to give an illustration what the climate index means. So it is quite different from the traditional insurance. The ones being insured is the climate index and not the crop. So actually, if a season met the index, says for example from the historical experience, the farmers actually fail their crop because of the rain fall during the season, the planting season is less than a certain amount. And we can make use of this certain amount as an index. So whenever the season receives the rainfall less than this index, and the farmer will get paid. So by doing that, actually, irrespective of the situation on the ground, whether the crop is survive or not, but when the index is being met, and the farmer will get paid. So I think by introducing this kind of index insurance can also encourage the farmers to adopt improved technology, for example, more resistant seed. So why is that? Because of course, if they are actually if they buy a policy, the index insurance policy, and then they're trying a certain technology that more resistant to drought, and then when they're testing this type of varieties, and the varieties being survive, and then of course the farmer will get income from the crop itself, but at the same time they also can get claim from the insurance. So this is one of the strategy how actually we can accelerate the adoption of the new technology. And of course it's not easy to give this understanding to the farmers, so we are trying to do some of the exercise in Indramayu. We are trying to assess how actually farmers making a decision after they know the concept of index insurance. So we work with 500 farmers in Indramayu, and at the beginning we also trying to do some exercise, interactive game, to develop an understanding of the farmers about the concept. And at the same time, we also work with the farmers to understand what type of risks they are being faced. Based on that, actually, we developed together with them this index instruments. The interesting things, actually, the farmers after the dry run is kind of testing the index instruments, and more than 55% there would like to pay to buy the insurance policy. So they would like to pay the premium. And of course, there are 30% still not sure whether they want to buy it or not, but only 10% they don't want to buy. But this is an indication there is a potential, this kind of index, to be introduced to the farmers. But of course, there are many challenges that we need to face, but there are ways in terms of measuring the index. We can use the satellite, and also another benefit of using the index, it also can reduce the transaction cost quite significantly, because they don't need to do survey to the location to find out whether the crop is really fail or not. But just depend on the measurement of seeing the satellite, they know whether the index being met or not in a certain season. So this is actually some of the work that we are doing, and I think quite sure that this kind of index instrument might be potential to be explored, and I think the collaboration between the insurance company, banking, and also the agency who provided technology will be very important. And I think I would like to end my share.
Perfect, thank you very much. We may be getting back to this. Essentially, you're talking about risk management, Rizaldi, and the potential role at least of weather insurance, index insurance, as a way to manage risk by transferring it to national and international insurance and reinsurance markets. That's what you're talking about. Hopefully, we can get back to it. In the process, of course, you would reduce uncertainty on the part of the farmer, which would be an incentive for the farmer to invest, which would then lead to improved inputs and links to markets, and as a result, that increased productivity. Sunny, please, our last speaker, last but not least.
Thank you, Marco. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to address 3 areas in my opening remarks. The first is a very brief introduction of Olam. We're a leading global agribusiness. We operate from farm to factory gate of our customers. We have about 62,500 employees working in 70 countries, supplying over 47 agricultural commodities and raw materials to about 14,600 customers across the globe. The second thing that I'd like to address in my opening remarks is really our approach to sustainability. Sustainability for us is really not an afterthought. It's not a risk mitigation mechanism to keep NGOs at bay, or it is not really to score public relations brownie points. But we believe that in order to live up to our name is Olam. It means 2 things: transcending boundaries and being enduring. If you want to be an enduring, everlasting company, the average age of a company today is about 12 years old. Companies are born and die within 12 years. The longest living company is about 1,000 years old. If you want to really be an enduring company, you will need to grow your business sustainably. There's no option. So our approach to sustainability is because we believe it's simply the right thing to do. And we want our people to experience and believe that they're working for a company that is doing the right thing. And we can't attract people to work for us if that is not the case. The approach to sustainability in Olam is anchored around our worldview that we all face 6 major developmental challenges this century. And these 6 challenges for us include food security, firstly, water security, energy security, fourthly, the impact of climate change, fifthly, sustainable growth. We can grow, but if you're going to be depleting massively natural capital, then that is not going to be sustainable. And finally, inclusive growth. If 80 people in the world can hold as much wealth as the bottom 3.7 billion people combined, we are not living in a sustainable world. And this is going to impact everybody in the ecosystem, including private organizations like ours. And finally, in my opening remarks, I want to just cover our approach to climate-smart agriculture. We are, for bad or good, one of the largest corporate farmers in the world. We have about 3 million hectares that we own or lease and farm. We grow 21 different crops in 26 different countries. There's nobody in our industry or peer group that is as broadly diversified upstream in farming or agriculture as we are. We are in dairy farming, both pasture-based dairy farming and confinement-based dairy farming. We are in tree crop, perennial plantation crops. So we grow palm and rubber and almonds and pistachios and walnuts. We grow coffee, we grow cocoa. So we are in perennials. We are also in broadacre row crops. So we farm spring wheat, winter wheat, soybean, corn, sugar beet, rice across different countries, peanuts in Argentina, for example. And we are in forest concessions. So we run the largest FSC, Forest Stewardship Council certified contiguous hardwood forest plantations in the world. So we have climate smart agriculture as far as Olam's direct farming and plantation operations are concerned. So I'll give you one or two quick examples and we can expand on all of this if there is interest in the Q&A session. So we are very large dehydrators of onions. We have a 60-70% global market share in supplying dehydrated onions. Over a 10-year period, we bred proprietary varieties, non-GMO, through traditional breeding technology to increase the solid content of those onions. So we grew it from about 13% solid content to about 26%, 27% solid content today. And that means we can, for the facilities that we have, we can use about 8,000 hectares less land to grow the onions that we require for dehydration. We save about 65 million cubic meters of water. And as a result of all that, we save about $85 million in terms of costs in less power and energy and everything else required to dehydrate an onion with higher solid content. We resort to zero-till or no-till farming across most of our direct farming and plantation operations. Thirdly, we have taken about 6 years to footprint. What is our carbon footprint? What is our water usage footprint? And what is our waste footprint? And then we have given very hard targets, both for our scope 1 directly that we are responsible for footprint, as well as for the indirect, our supply chain footprint, in how much we will reduce this through various ways and means in prescribed time frames. So what we will do by 2015, what we will do by 2020, by 2025, and through the CDP reporting mechanism, we report every year how we are doing against those targets in terms of our carbon emissions or our water emissions or water usage efficiency or our footprint. And we try and make sure that we maximize crop per drop of water that we use in terms of having very high irrigation and water usage efficiencies. I'm happy to take any of this in the Q&A session that will follow this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sunny. Let me pick out two themes from the various submissions that I've heard. And on the first one, I would like to invite Sunny and Margaret to react. And on the second one, the other two speakers. The first one has to do with the smallholder farmers. It is probably fair to say that Olam wouldn't be much without the farmers that produce into the value chains that you, of course, guide and organize farmers for, provide technology, and very importantly, you provide access to markets. But there is a little bit of a debate. I don't know if I seem to have heard from Margaret's comments about the farmers' rights. You didn't use exactly that term, but you used concepts such as representation of farmer self-determination, the role of women farmers, and so on. So how do you bring these elements together in a situation in which clearly we cannot say that subsistence farming can be the answer? In fact, subsistence farming is by its very essence, inimical to the notion of climate smart agriculture and or that other notion which essentially amounts to the same thing, which is sustainable agricultural intensification. But there are different perspectives that people bring to the table, different stakeholders bring to the table. So small-scale farmers, Margaret and Sunny, if you would like to address, and maybe I'll let you go on this and reserve my second topic for the other two speakers too afterwards. Do you want to go first, Margaret? Let Sunny go first. It's your choice.
Ladies first.
Ladies first again.
Okay, so did I understood you're asking why we are more on community, small-scale, farmer-centered?
And I'm asking whether that is compatible with the need, I would say, the need of linking farmers to markets, providing opportunities for them to sell additional commodities and produce that they are producing as soon as intensification occurs as a result of and with the help of agricultural technology and support services.
Okay, so our ultimate goal actually is to have a climate resilient community. And by that, you make them smart, no? Smart community. Well, we're always talking about smart farmers now, wherein they could help themselves be resilient by doing it by themselves, by providing them with technologies, by informing them, giving them the correct information on what technologies are available and how they could be linked to market. Resilient community means also that they generate their own income, and then they go for some what do you call that? They can understand their vulnerabilities, and by that they be able to cope, to develop their own coping mechanisms, and empowering them to develop their own coping mechanism, and how they could be a good entrepreneurs as well, and how they could adopt those climate resilient or climate smart agriculture practices. So the keywords there is that giving them ability to develop their own coping mechanisms. Actually, I'm trying to say is that climate smart agriculture is a new word in an old word in a new outfit. It used to be, it's like a just sustainable agriculture, I'll say. There are a lot of words that describes climate smart agriculture as well. It's a sustainable agriculture, it's conservation agriculture, but the objective, main objective is just to the same, right?
Mm-hmm. It is resilient communities. Sunny, is the concept of community and community resilience compatible with the concept of contract farming?
Yeah, I think contract farming is one way of securing supply chains. But we have to accept that both large-scale farming and smallholder farming will have to coexist. It's a false debate and a false choice that only large-scale farming will work or only small-scale farming will work. Based on the context and the population densities and the agroclimatic conditions in different growing regions in the world, both these farming systems will be there. So in India, China, and the emerging markets, for me, it'll always be smallholder farmers. It is not going to, in the near future, and even in the distant future, become very large-scale mechanized farming. So we need to invest both in research to improve smallholder farm productivity as well as the large-scale farming systems. Both should be done hand in hand. But going to the smallholder farmers, in our network and supply chain, we touch about 4 million farmers. But beyond the 4 million farmers who supply to us through various means and sources, we also have something called the Olam Livelihood Charter, where right now about 350 farmers in a very intensive fashion are supported by Olam. And we support them across 8 areas. So the first area is we offer them microfinancing, both in terms of short-term and medium-term financing to fund the working capital required to grow the commodities, including the inputs that are required to be bought, etc. But more importantly, also if they need some processing equipment, etc., that they need in the medium term to be able to better store or better realize value addition from the produce that they're supplying. The second that we do is to try and improve farmer yield and productivity. So in the outgrow program that we have around a rice farm, so every place where we have our plantation around that, we have a large smallholder program or a contract growing program. And the average yields in Nigeria for rice production is about 1.2 tons. Our farmers under the outgrow program are now producing about 2.2 tons. On our main farm, we are producing now about 5 tons. Our objective is on our main mechanized plantation, we can take yields up to between 6 and 7 tons, and for the smallholder farmers, at least to 3.5 tons per hectare. So that's the second thing that we do. We have 1,100 extension officers who communicate good agricultural practices to these smallholder farmers. The third thing that we do is really increasing the quality of the crop that he's producing so that he can get some value-added realization. The fourth thing that we do is to make sure that we can offer traceability guarantees and certified raw materials, which will allow him to get a higher income. And this does not only need to be organically certified raw materials, it can be other kinds of certifications of producing customized grades and qualities. We also educate him on labor practices, on child labor and not having child labor on his farms. So that is the other thing that we do. And finally, on environmental resilience, on what he can do in reducing greenhouse gas emissions, what are the practical things that he can do in order to address that and in order to address his water footprint. So, and we produce, and we provide, as you mentioned in your comment as well, market access, transparent market access, so that he knows that he can get a price that is globally benchmarked or transparent, a fair price for the produce that he delivers.
Transparent or fair price, or basically the concept of shared value,
yes,
I suppose. Right, we'll get back to all of this if we have time. Let me raise the issue of intensification, which both of you referred to, in fact, all of us referred to, versus land use change. The more sustainable, at least, intensification there is, the less there is the need for land use change, with all of its negative connotations, including forest fires, which is a topic, obviously, that is very relevant in this particular country. Does Agus want to refer to this first, and then Rizaldi?
I don't think if we target is to increase the productivity, the amount of palm oil products to produce, then we need to convert additional lands. So I fully support the policy of the president when he declared a few weeks ago that he would like to go for a moratorium of new expansions. It's intensification. It's clear, it's promising, the technology is available, it's also cost effective. On the issue of, I saw some of the questions there, the questions about the emissions that generated by the palm oil industry. Actually, when we use the land use as an approach, where we identify the potentials of taking aside or saving parts of the concessions that have high biodiversity value, that have high carbon stock values, then actually in our calculations, we can operate as a carbon neutral company. Our emissions, which is about 480 kilogram per tons of products, can be compensated by our 80,000 HCV and SAS area, who was also maintaining more or less the same amount that we are producing in our 3 million tons of productions. So land use, if you manage it well, it can be part of the solution. And it should not create additional headache to those who would like to conserve more biodiversity, nor also those who would like to achieve the targets of reducing greenhouse gases emission. The question is more on the overall sector. As a company, our 500,000 hectares comprise of 120,000 of plasma smallholders and 380,000 of our own, and about 80,000 of conservation areas. So if we know we can do it, and also there is a big possibility that as a whole we can go to that directions. It will need times, and essentially what we need is time to bring everybody agree to the idea and have a carbon neutral palm oil products in the global market.
Rizaldi, same topic, intensification, risk management, land use change.
Yeah, I think we have to go to that direction. And I think these are actually the main problems that we are facing now. So if you look at the farmers or community who live surrounding the forest, for example, they actually, the productivity of their crop is very, very low. Just one of the example when we visited farmers in the national park in South Sumatra, actually they also manage the coffee. Actually just coffee, but it's very, but the productivity is only 1/5. of the the average, national average. And because of there is no actually touch of the technology. And then we are talking about the technology. Of course, we would like to improve and to intensify. And I think the introduction of technology is very important. And then we know also the challenge actually, the farmers cannot do just by themselves. And I think there should be some facilitators, talking about extension services. Even the system rice intensification, for example. And we have been talking about this many times, and I think the successful rate of that is not also very high. But we know that many farmers are quite successful, but if we look at, if we go there, actually there is some facilitator working with them closely, whether it's NGOs or extension services from the ministries. And I think the agency related to the extension services become very, very crucial. How actually we can accelerating, because we are talking about the climate change, we are talking about timing. And we are too late, and I think it's very hard, I think, to limit the increase of the greenhouse gas emission. And I think in many lines, I think we have to accelerate. Particularly, we are talking about smallholder farmers. I think the extension service is very crucial. And I think this is the only way, actually, how actually we can improve the productivity of the crop from the small farmers. Even though we have very good financial access, microfinance, and also technologies available, but if there is no this kind of extension services in place, well, and I think still very hard. And I think that's my point.
Rizaldi, one of the questions from the audience that we're getting here through electronic media is precisely about the topic that you addressed just now, namely what technologies can be adopted and what is needed for technologies to be adoptable by small-scale farmers with a view to improving productivity as well as resilience in a climate-challenged world.
Yeah. And I think if we look at the reality, I think many of our small farmers are being trapped by the money lender. And I think because they cannot access or borrow the money from the bank. And I think even though with the microfinance, they also do not like actors through the process. It might take time for them to access the fund. But the money lenders, without any agreement, they can borrow the money directly. But the problem is actually we know that the price is being dictated by the money lenders. And they cannot sell to anybody, they have to go to the money lenders. And then we discuss with them very closely. And then if you look at what are the level of interest, even though they are not talking about the interest, but we know the way they pay back. And I think the interest is very high. And then if we go back into the issue of the insurance index, the premium that can be that have to be paid is much lower compared to the rest, the interest that they have to pay the money lender. And then if we have kind of policies, for example, if the farmers are being protected by the insurance, they can use the insurance policy as a collateral for borrowing money from the bank. And I think we have this kind of regulation will be very good, because the bank will not be afraid that the farmers cannot be paid back because they are being protected by the insurance in case of the bad years. They still can can plant the crops. And I think talking about the technology adoption, and I think we need to create many kind of policies. And one of them I just want to underline again about the potential of introducing the weather index instrument as one of the strategies.
Thank you. The audience seems to be intrigued by the question of urban farming. It's the question that is receiving the most votes here. Could urban farming in ASEAN cities be a form of climate-smart agriculture? And let me ask you this question as in general, but specifically with respect to the operations of Olam as well as Golden Agri-Resources. Presumably you cannot run plantations on rooftops. Sunny.
I think for fruits and vegetables and horticultural crops, vertical farming is a potential way forward. But I think the technology and the cost of doing that in urban centers is still not a proven model. I think the hotbeds where technology is being trialed on a commercial scale is in Japan and in Holland. And I think there is, and in New York as well. And I think there is some scope. But I think it's still very early days. But it is definitely not applicable to perennial crops, and it's definitely not applicable to large broadacre row crops. But I think in fruits, vegetables, it's definitely an option.
There's a scope. There's a scope there. Agus, did you want to address this?
No,
Is it a topic in Indonesia? Urban farming, vertical farming?
Just like what Sunny said, from what I know of, there are a lot of the exercises more toward the vegetables types of crops. It's not perennial.
Okay. So, Margaret, did you want to address this or any other topic before we conclude? Because I'm seeing that the time is running away.
Well, it depends on the limitation of what country is it. So Singapore is very good in vertical farming, so it would be a best suited practice for them. But for those who have land-rich countries, then there is another way of technology, another means or technology that is suitable for that.
Right. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think that the management is signaling that we need to come to a close. So, let me reflect just very briefly, a minute or so and not longer, on our topic, climate smart agriculture. I think that one aspect that the panel is agreeable to, and that has to do with productivity, the need to increase productivity, which to me means the reduction of waste of people in the first place, as well as land, water, agrochemicals, fertilizers, and more, capital, etc., given that the alternative, the counterfactual, which would say that there's so much more that we can do along the lines of doing more with less, growing more crop with less. This, however, requires the right kinds of technologies. It requires affordable technologies. It requires risk management, as we have heard, and it requires access to markets, because access to markets is, unless there are other non-farm income sources that particular farm has access to markets is the path to the wherewithal that is required in order to buy technologies in the first place. So productivity, I think, central. Secondly, links to markets, of course, has to do with value chains. There cannot be links to market in some artificial space. There has to be a demand for food that is being satisfied, and that demand for food in modern food markets gets more and more interested in the question of traceability and quality compliance. And I think that my personal observation here would be that we're facing, of course, actually a very good situation in the many emerging market countries, including ASEAN, where we have positive per capita economic growth. Dynamic economic growth will lead to those expanding food markets to which small farmers and large farmers can now be linked if we can come up with the right organizational procedures and practices. The third aspect that came through, I think, clearly was the importance of the community dimension. So this is about land, this is about the habitat in which people in the rural segment operate and work and derive their livelihoods. And I think that we're concluding that there is not only an economic dimension here, but other dimensions, human dimensions, social dimensions that are very important. And they touch a number of aspects, clearly land and water, as well as farmers, workers, women, and the whole question again of access to technology. And in this context, again, I think that the notion of affordability of technology would seem to be very important. And it is, and again, risk management, agricultural index insurance, of course, is a factor in the affordability, because affordability also has to do something with credit available, such as in the form of input loans at the level of producers, and that credit can be collateralized by insurance solutions. These are some of my concluding thoughts. I would like to thank the panel, and maybe the audience can join me in a big hand for our excellent panel. Thank you very much.